My stepdaughter accused me of ruining her parents' marriage and demanded I confess to something I never did. So I walked away and let her live with the consequences. I confessed to an affair that never happened. So, I chose my dignity over my marriage. She got what she wanted, but lost her mother's happiness forever. I, 38M, need some perspective on what happened between me and my wife's daughter, Aleliana, 20F. I've been married to Zara, 41F, for 4 years now. She has a daughter, Aleliana, 20F, from her previous marriage. I met Aleliana when she was 12 years old, right after Zara and I started dating. Let me give you the full background because it matters. Zara worked at the same marketing firm as me for about 8 months. We were in different departments and barely interacted except for the occasional project meeting or company event. I was actually dating someone else at the time, and Zara seemed happily married based on the family photos on her desk. I left that job to join a startup and didn't think about Zara again. About 2 years later, I ran into Zara at a former colleague's birthday party. She looked different, tired maybe, and when we caught up, she mentioned she was going through a divorce. Her husband had moved out 6 months earlier, and the paperwork was almost finalized. We talked for most of the evening, and I asked if she wanted to get coffee sometime. That's how it started. The divorce had been messy. Zara's ex-husband Tom claimed she was having an affair, though he never named anyone specific. Zara told me he was paranoid and controlling, always accusing her of cheating when she worked late or went out with friends. She said the marriage had been over for years before they physically separated. When Zara and I started dating, Aleliana seemed to accept me well enough. I tried not to overstep as a father figure, but helped with homework when asked, and drove her to soccer practice when Zara was busy. Aleliana was polite but distant, which I figured was normal for a kid whose parents had just divorced. Things changed when Aleliana turned 15. She started making comments about men who leave their wives for younger women. Zara is only 3 years older than me, so this seemed odd. Then Aleliana began asking pointed questions about how Zara and I met, wanting exact dates and details. She would count on her fingers and say things like, "That's interesting timing." When we explained, our relationship started after the divorce filing. Zara eventually told me that Tom had been filling Aleliana's head with stories about our supposed affair. He claimed Zara had been sneaking around with a coworker, and that's why their marriage ended. Since Aleliana knew I used to work with her mother, she put 2 and 2 together and got 5. Zara tried explaining that we barely knew each other at the old job and hadn't spoken for 2 years before reconnecting, but Aleliana didn't believe it. The accusations got worse over time. Aleliana would make snide remarks about homewreckers during family dinners or roll her eyes when Zara and I showed any affection. She started spending more time at her father's house and less time with us. When she did visit, she acted like I was some kind of predator who had stolen her mother away. Zara tried talking to Tom about stopping the poison he was feeding Aleliana, but he claimed he was just being honest about what he believed happened. He said Aleliana deserved to know the truth about why her family fell apart. Zara's lawyer advised against pushing too hard since the custody arrangement was working, and Aleliana was almost old enough to choose where she wanted to live anyway. By the time Aleliana started college, she was barely speaking to me at all. She would come home for holidays and act like I was invisible. Zara would try to include me in conversations, but Aleliana would give one-word answers or just leave the room. It was like living with a ghost who actively hated me. The worst part was watching what this did to Zara. She would cry after Aleliana left, wondering if she should have fought harder to clear our names, or if she had somehow failed as a mother. I suggested we could show Aleliana our old work emails to prove we barely interacted, but Zara said it would look like we were trying too hard and might make things worse. Last month, Aleliana came home for summer break after finishing her sophomore year. She had been living in the dorms and working part-time jobs during school, so we hadn't seen much of her. Zara was excited to have her daughter back, planning family dinners and movie nights. Aleliana agreed to come home, but spent most of her time locked in her room or out with friends. The tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a knife. Aleliana would grunt responses to Zara's questions and completely ignore me when I tried to make conversation. She ate dinner in her room most nights and left her dishes in the sink for Zara to clean up. When Zara asked her to help with household chores, Aleliana would do them with dramatic sighs and eye rolls. 3 weeks into Aleliana's stay, things came to a head. I was working from home in the living room when Aleliana came downstairs and turned on the TV. She cranked the volume up loud enough that I couldn't concentrate on my video call. I waited for her to notice I was working, but she just sprawled on the couch, scrolling her phone while some reality show blared. After my call ended, I asked Aleliana if she could turn the volume down since I had another meeting in an hour. She looked at me like I'd asked her to donate a kidney. She said it was her house too, and she could watch TV at whatever volume she wanted. I explained that I was at work and needed quiet, but she just turned the volume up louder. That's when Aleliana started yelling. She said I had no right to tell her what to do in her mother's house. She called me a homewrecker who destroyed her family and ruined her childhood. She said I was a pathetic man who couldn't find his own woman, so I had to steal someone else's wife. She accused me of manipulating Zara and turning her against her own daughter. The worst part was when Aleliana called me a gold digger. She said I obviously married Zara for her money and stable life because I was too lazy to build my own success. She said everyone could see I was using Zara and that her father had been right about me all along. She said I was disgusting, and she wished Zara had never met me. I stood there listening to this 20-year-old tear apart my character and my marriage. Every accusation felt like a slap in the face. The gold digger comments particularly stung because I actually make more money than Zara and had turned down a higher-paying job specifically to avoid the stress affecting our family life. When Aleliana finally ran out of steam, I told her she needed to leave the house and come back when she could be respectful. She laughed and said she wasn't going anywhere because it was her real home, not mine. I said she was welcome back anytime, but not to treat me like garbage in the process. Aleliana grabbed her keys and stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. Zara came home an hour later to find me sitting on the couch staring at nothing. When I told her what happened, she immediately tried calling Aleliana, but got voicemail. Aleliana didn't come home that night or answer any of Zara's texts. Zara was frantic, calling Aleliana's friends and even Tom to see if anyone had heard from her. Tom called Zara back the next morning, furious. Aleliana had shown up at his apartment crying and told him I had thrown her out of the house for watching TV. She claimed I had been verbally abusive and said horrible things about her father. Tom said he always knew I was bad news and threatened to call the police if I ever laid a hand on his daughter. Zara tried explaining what really happened, but Tom said version sounded more believable given my history of breaking up marriages. He said Aleliana would be staying with him permanently and that Zara could visit if she wanted, but I wasn't welcome. Zara spent the next 3 days trying to reach Aleliana, leaving voicemails begging her daughter to call her back. I've been replaying that afternoon over and over, wondering if I handled it wrong. Maybe I should have just put on headphones and ignored the TV volume. Maybe I should have let vent without asking her to leave. But I also can't shake the feeling that this confrontation was inevitable after years of Aleliana treating me like the villain in her family's story. Zara hasn't said much about what she thinks I should have done differently, but I can see the strain on her face. She's caught between her daughter and her husband, trying to maintain relationships with both of us, while Aleliana refuses to be in the same room as me. I don't know how to fix this, or if it can be fixed at all. The house feels empty without Aleliana's presence, even though that presence was mostly hostile. Zara keeps checking her phone, hoping for a message that never comes. I feel like I've cost Zara her relationship with her daughter, which was never my intention. I just wanted to be treated with basic respect in my own home. So now I'm wondering if I'm the problem here. Should I have just accepted Aleliana's treatment indefinitely? Was asking her to leave crossing a line? How do you deal with a stepchild who sees you as the enemy no matter what you do? Update 1. I wasn't planning to update this post, but some things have happened that I wanted to share. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. Some of you were harsh, but I needed to hear different perspectives after Aleliana stormed out 3 weeks ago. Zara and I barely spoke for several days. She wasn't angry with me exactly, but she was grieving the loss of her relationship with Aleliana. Zara would sit by her phone waiting for calls that never came. She started working longer hours to avoid coming home to the empty house. I tried giving Zara space while also being supportive, but it felt like walking on eggshells. Every conversation seemed to circle back to Aleliana somehow. Zara would mention something funny used to do as a kid, then remember they weren't speaking and get quiet. The guilt was eating both of us alive. A week after the blow-up, Tom called Zara, demanding she choose between Aleliana and me. He said Aleliana was refusing therapy or family mediation as long as I was in the picture. He claimed Aleliana was having panic attacks and couldn't sleep because she felt unsafe knowing I was living in her childhood home. Tom said if Zara really loved her daughter, she would leave me and try to repair their relationship. Zara told Tom she wasn't leaving her husband but wanted to work things out with Aleliana. Tom said that wasn't good enough and hung up on her. Zara cried for hours after that call. She kept saying she never thought she would have to choose between her daughter and her spouse. The next day, Zara drove to Tom's apartment building and waited in the parking lot for Aleliana to come outside. When Aleliana finally appeared, Zara approached her and asked if they could talk. Aleliana said she had nothing to say unless I was out of Zara's life permanently. Zara explained that wasn't happening, but she wanted to understand Aleliana's perspective and find a way forward. Aleliana told Zara she could never feel comfortable around me because of what I had done to their family. She said seeing Zara with me was a constant reminder of her parents' divorce and her father's pain. Aleliana claimed she had tried to accept me for years, but couldn't pretend anymore after I threw her out of the house. She said if Zara chose me over her own daughter, then Zara wasn't the mother she thought she knew. Zara came home from that conversation completely broken. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing for hours. When I tried to comfort her, she pulled away and said she needed space to think. That night, she slept in the guest room for the first time since we'd been married. Over the next few days, Zara started questioning everything about our relationship. She asked if I thought Tom might have been right about us having an emotional affair before his divorce was final. She wondered if she had been lying to herself about the timeline of our relationship. She even suggested maybe we should take a break while she tried to repair things with Aleliana. I reminded Zara of the actual facts about how we met and when we started dating. I showed her old emails and photos that proved our timeline, but Zara said facts didn't matter if Aleliana couldn't accept them. She said maybe the truth was less important than her relationship with her daughter. That's when I realized Zara was seriously considering leaving me to get back. The woman who had been my partner for 5 years was ready to throw away our marriage based on her daughter's version of events. I told Zara she needed to decide what she wanted, but I wasn't going to beg her to stay married to me. Zara moved into the guest room permanently and started seeing Aleliana regularly at Tom's apartment. She would come home and tell me about their visits, how Aleliana seemed happier when I wasn't mentioned. Zara said Aleliana was willing to rebuild their relationship if I wasn't part of the equation. She asked if I would consider moving out temporarily, to give Aleliana space to come home. I told Zara I wasn't moving out of our house because her adult daughter couldn't handle sharing space with me. I said if Aleliana wanted a relationship with her mother, she needed to accept that Zara was married to me. Zara said I was being unreasonable and putting her in an impossible position. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago when Zara announced she was thinking about filing for separation. She said she couldn't live with the constant conflict and needed to prioritize her relationship with Aleliana. She claimed she still loved me but couldn't sacrifice her daughter for her marriage. Zara said she hoped we could work things out eventually, but Aleliana had to come first. I packed a bag that night and went to stay with my brother. I told Zara to call me when she decided whether she wanted to be married or divorced, but I wasn't going to participate in this back and forth anymore. Zara cried and said she didn't want me to leave, but she also couldn't commit to choosing me over Aleliana. I've been staying at my brother's place for 2 weeks now. Zara calls every few days to check on me, but she hasn't asked me to come home. She says Aleliana has been visiting the house again and they're rebuilding their relationship. Zara claims Aleliana is like a different person when I'm not around, laughing and joking like she used to as a kid. Meanwhile, I've been meeting with a lawyer to understand my options. We own the house together and have joint bank accounts, so separation would be complicated. The lawyer said I have a strong case for keeping the house since I contribute more to the mortgage, but Zara could claim it as Aleliana's childhood home in a custody-like argument. My brother thinks I should fight for Zara and not let Aleliana destroy our marriage. He says, Zara is being manipulated by her ex-husband and daughter, and she'll regret choosing them over me. But I'm starting to wonder if this marriage was doomed from the start. Maybe you can't build a lasting relationship when one person's child sees you as the enemy. I got a text from Zara yesterday saying Aleliana wants to have a conversation with me. Apparently, Aleliana told Zara she might be willing to coexist if I apologized for throwing her out and acknowledged the pain I caused their family. Aleliana wants me to admit that my relationship with Zara contributed to her parents' divorce, even if it wasn't technically an affair. I haven't responded to Zara's text yet. Part of me wants to apologize just to save my marriage, but another part of me refuses to confess to something I didn't do. If I admit fault for their divorce, it validates everything Aleliana and Tom have said about me. But if I don't apologize, I'll probably lose Zara forever. So now I'm living in my brother's spare room, wondering if my marriage is over, because a 20-year-old can't accept that her parents' divorce wasn't my fault. Zara seems willing to sacrifice our relationship to appease, which tells me everything I need to know about where I stand in her priorities. I don't know what I'm going to do about demand for an apology. Maybe some of you can help me figure out if I should swallow my pride to save my marriage, or stand my ground and accept that this relationship might be over. Update 2. I want to thank everyone who responded to my last update. A lot of you told me not to apologize for something I didn't do, and others said marriage requires compromise. I've been thinking about all your advice while trying to figure out what to do next. After my last post, I decided to meet with Aleliana to hear what she had to say. I wasn't planning to apologize for breaking up her parents' marriage, but I thought maybe we could find some middle ground. Zara arranged for us to meet at a coffee shop near her college campus, neutral territory, where Aleliana might feel more comfortable. Aleliana showed up 20 minutes late and didn't apologize for keeping me waiting. She ordered an expensive drink and didn't offer to pay, so I covered it along with my own coffee. We sat across from each other in awkward silence until I asked what she wanted to discuss. Aleliana said she had been thinking about our family situation and realized she might have been too harsh with me over the years. She said she was willing to give me another chance if I could acknowledge the role I played in her trauma. She wanted me to understand that regardless of the technical timeline, my relationship with Zara had hurt her and her father. I told Aleliana I was sorry she had been hurt by her parents' divorce and that I never intended to cause her pain. I explained again that Zara and I barely knew each other when her parents separated and that we only started dating after Tom had already moved out. Aleliana listened but kept shaking her head like she didn't believe me. Then Aleliana said something that surprised me. She told me she had found some old social media posts that showed Zara and me at the same company events before her parents' divorce. She had screenshots of Zara commenting on my posts and me liking her photos from 2 years before we claimed to have reconnected. Aleliana said this proved we had been in contact the whole time and lying about our relationship timeline. I looked at the screenshots Aleliana showed me on her phone. They were real posts from company parties and work events, but they didn't prove anything inappropriate. Zara had commented things like, "Great presentation today" on my work posts, and I liked group photos that happened to include her. Aleliana interpreted these normal workplace interactions as evidence of a secret relationship. I tried explaining that liking someone's professional posts doesn't constitute an affair, but Aleliana said I was still lying to her. She claimed the social media interactions proved I had been pursuing her mother while her parents were still married. Aleliana said she had shown these screenshots to her father, and he agreed they were proof of the affair he had always suspected. The conversation went downhill from there. Aleliana accused me of gaslighting her and trying to rewrite history, She said even if I hadn't physically cheated with Zara, I had been emotionally involved with her mother before the divorce. Aleliana demanded I admit to at least having feelings for Zara while she was still married, which she said was just as bad as a physical affair. I told Aleliana I wasn't going to confess to something that didn't happen just to make her feel better about her parents' divorce. I said if she wanted to blame me for her family's problems, that was her choice, but I wouldn't participate in rewriting history. Aleliana called me selfish and said I cared more about being right than about her mother's happiness. The meeting ended with Aleliana storming out of the coffee shop after throwing her drink in the trash dramatically. She texted Zara immediately to report that I had refused to take responsibility for my actions and wasn't interested in making peace. Zara called me an hour later, asking why I couldn't just give Aleliana what she needed to heal. I drove back to my brother's apartment wondering if I was losing my mind. Zara seemed to believe that admitting fault, even for something I didn't do, was a small price to pay for family harmony. But I couldn't bring myself to confess to an affair that never happened, especially when Aleliana would probably use that confession against me forever. Things got worse over the next few weeks. Aleliana apparently showed those social media screenshots to other family members and friends, presenting them as proof that I had broken up her parents' marriage. Zara's sister called to tell her that maybe she should reconsider her relationship with someone who would lie about something so important. Zara's mother, who had always been polite to me, started making comments about men who can't be trusted. Zara began pulling away from me even more after that. She said Aleliana's evidence had shaken her confidence in our version of events. Zara asked if I could understand why those old social media interactions looked suspicious, even if they were innocent. She wondered if we had been subconsciously attracted to each other before we consciously acknowledged it. I realized Zara was looking for reasons to doubt our relationship because it would make choosing Aleliana easier. If she could convince herself that we had lied about our timeline, then she could justify ending our marriage without feeling guilty. Zara was rewriting our history to match Aleliana's narrative because the truth was too complicated for her daughter to accept. Last month, Zara asked me to move out permanently so she could focus on repairing her relationship with Aleliana. She said she needed space to think about what she wanted and couldn't do that with me living in the house. Zara promised we could work on our marriage later, but Aleliana had to be her priority right now. I told Zara I was done waiting for her to choose between her daughter and her husband. If she wanted Aleliana more than she wanted our marriage, then she should file for divorce and stop stringing me along. Zara cried and said she didn't want to lose me, but she also couldn't lose Aleliana again. 2 weeks ago, I served Zara with divorce papers. I decided I was tired of being the villain in their family story and wasn't going to spend the rest of my life proving my innocence to people who had already decided I was guilty. Zara was shocked that I had actually filed. She thought I would wait forever for her to make up her mind. Zara begged me to reconsider and give her more time to work things out with Aleliana. She said Aleliana was finally coming around and might be willing to coexist if we all tried harder. Zara claimed she could have both her daughter and her husband if everyone just compromised a little more. I told Zara the time for compromise had passed. I had spent 5 years being treated like an intruder in my own home by her daughter, and now she was asking me to confess to crimes I didn't commit just to keep the peace. I said if Aleliana was more important than our marriage, then Zara should be happy to be rid of me. The divorce proceedings have been civil so far. Zara gets to keep the house, since Aleliana considers it her childhood home, and I get to keep most of my retirement account, since I contributed more to them. We're splitting the joint savings account and Zara is buying out my portion of the house equity. Aleliana apparently celebrated when she heard about the divorce papers. Zara told me said she was proud of her mother for finally putting family first. Aleliana has been spending more time at the house and even invited Zara to visit her at college next semester. The mother-daughter relationship Zara was so desperate to save seems to be thriving now that I'm out of the picture. I'm staying with my brother until I can find my own apartment. It's strange being single again after 5 years of marriage, but I'm not as devastated as I thought I would be. Mostly, I feel relieved that I don't have to defend myself anymore or walk on eggshells around Aleliana's moods. My lawyer says the divorce should be finalized within the next few months. Zara has been texting me occasionally to check how I'm doing, but I've been keeping my responses brief. There's nothing left to say that hasn't already been said. Zara made her choice, and now we both have to live with the consequences. Update 3. The divorce was finalized last month. Zara and I are officially no longer married, and I've moved into my own apartment across town. I wanted to give you all a final update since many of you have been following this situation from the beginning. The divorce proceedings went smoothly once we both accepted it was really happening. Zara kept the house and bought out my share of the equity. I kept my retirement accounts and most of my personal belongings. We split the joint savings account down the middle and canceled all our shared credit cards. The whole process took about 3 months once we stopped trying to negotiate every detail. Zara attempted to reconcile with me twice during the divorce process. The first time was about 6 weeks after I filed the papers. She called crying and said she had made a terrible mistake choosing Aleliana over our marriage. Zara claimed she realized how much she loved me and wanted to work things out. She said Aleliana was being unreasonable, and Zara was tired of letting her daughter control her life. I told Zara it was too late for second thoughts. The divorce papers were already filed, and I had already started moving on with my life. Zara said we could stop the proceedings if we both wanted to, but I told her I didn't want to. I said I couldn't trust her not to choose Aleliana over me again the next time there was conflict. The second reconciliation attempt happened right before our final court date. Zara showed up at my brother's apartment and said she wanted to fight for our marriage. She claimed she had been talking to a counselor who helped her understand that she had been letting Aleliana manipulate her. Zara said she was ready to set boundaries with her daughter and prioritize our relationship. I listened to what Zara had to say, but I didn't believe her. She had spent months putting Aleliana's demands ahead of our marriage, and I didn't think that would change just because a counselor told her it was unhealthy. I told Zara I appreciated her coming to talk to me, but I was committed to moving forward with the divorce. Zara asked if I would consider dating her again after the divorce was final, like we could start fresh without the pressure of being married. I told her that wasn't something I was interested in exploring. Zara had shown me where I ranked in her priorities, and I didn't want to go through this again if Aleliana decided she still didn't like me. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in a courthouse downtown. Zara and I sat with our lawyers while a judge reviewed our settlement agreement and signed the papers. The whole thing took less than 30 minutes. Afterward, Zara tried to hug me goodbye, but I just shook her hand and wished her well. I ran into Aleliana at a grocery store 2 weeks after the divorce was final. She was home from college and shopping with some friends. Aleliana saw me in the produce section and walked over with a smug expression on her face. She said she heard the divorce was finalized and wanted to thank me for finally doing the right thing. Aleliana told me her mother was much happier without me around and that their relationship had never been better. She said Zara had been pretending to be happy in our marriage, but was actually miserable the whole time. Aleliana claimed Zara had confided that she married me too quickly after her divorce and regretted not taking more time to focus on her daughter. I told Aleliana I was glad she and Zara were getting along better and that I hoped they would both be happy. Aleliana seemed disappointed that I didn't get angry or defensive. She made some comment about how I probably didn't really love Zara anyway since I gave up so easily. I just said goodbye and finished my shopping. Zara has texted me a few times since the divorce was finalized. She sent me a photo of a vacation she took with Aleliana over spring break and said she thought I would want to know they were doing well. She also texted me on my birthday to wish me well and say she hoped I was finding happiness. I haven't responded to any of her messages. My brother thinks Zara will realize she made a mistake once Aleliana graduates college and moves on with her own life. He says Zara will be lonely without a husband and will come crawling back asking for another chance. But I don't think that's going to happen, and I wouldn't want it to anyway. I've started dating someone new. Her name is Jessica, and she works in accounting at my company. We've been seeing each other for about 2 months now. Jessica has never been married and doesn't have kids, which feels refreshing after dealing with all the blended family drama. She knows about my divorce, but doesn't ask a lot of questions about what happened. Jessica and I are taking things slowly and not making any major commitments yet. I'm enjoying getting to know someone without the baggage of stepchildren and ex-husbands and family loyalty tests. Jessica treats me like a normal person instead of someone who needs to constantly prove his worth and intentions. I'm not bitter about how things worked out with Zara and Aleliana. Zara got what she wanted, which was her daughter's approval and a peaceful relationship with her. Aleliana got what she wanted, which was me out of their lives permanently. I got what I needed, which was to stop being treated like a villain for falling in love with someone whose first marriage had already ended. The house I shared with Zara sold last month. Zara decided it was too big for just her and Aleliana when she visits from college. She moved into a smaller place closer to Tom's apartment so Aleliana can easily visit both parents. I drove past the old house one day and saw the new owners had painted it a different color and planted new flowers in the front yard. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just apologized to Aleliana for something I didn't do. Maybe Zara and I would still be married and trying to make it work. But I think Aleliana would have kept finding reasons to dislike me even if I had admitted fault for her parents' divorce. Some people need someone to blame for their problems, and I was convenient. I don't regret standing my ground and refusing to confess to an affair that never happened. My integrity was more important than keeping a marriage that required me to lie about who I was and what I had done. Zara chose her daughter over her husband, and it told me everything I needed to know about our relationship. The divorce taught me that you can't force people to choose you, and you can't build a lasting relationship with someone who puts other people's feelings ahead of yours consistently. Zara wasn't a bad person, but she wasn't the right person for me. Aleliana wasn't evil, just young and hurt, and looking for someone to blame for her family's breakdown. I'm in a better place now than I was a year ago. I have my own apartment, a job I enjoy, and I'm dating someone who actually wants to be with me. I'm not looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next family crisis, or wondering if I'm about to be thrown under the bus again. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away from people who don't appreciate what you bring to their lives. That's my final update. Thank you to everyone who followed this story and offered advice along the way. I hope other people in similar situations can learn something from what I went through. Sometimes love isn't enough to overcome other people's determination to see you as the villain in their story. Now, let's move to the next story. Story 2. My parents gave our family business to my sister's unqualified husband over me. He bankrupted it and disappeared with their money. Now they're begging for my help. I, 30M, really need to get this off my chest because what happened recently has left me feeling both angry and vindicated. Our family has been in the manufacturing business for 3 generations. My grandfather started it, my father expanded it, and I was supposed to be the one to take it to the next level. At least that's what I thought until my parents decided that my brother-in-law would be a better choice just because he's married to their favorite daughter. I joined our family business right after completing my MBA 6 years ago. I could have taken high-paying jobs at several multinational companies, but I chose to work with my dad because I grew up watching him run this business, and I wanted to continue our family legacy. My sister Daphne, 34F, never showed any interest in the business. She got married to Ethan, 35M, 7 years ago and became a stay-at-home mom. I never liked Ethan from the start. He's one of those guys who think they know everything about business just because they read a few entrepreneurship books. He has a bachelor's degree in communications and spent most of his career jumping from one sales job to another, never staying at one place for more than a year. But he always had big talk about how he could run any business successfully if given a chance. When I joined our company, things weren't great. We were using outdated systems. Our client base was shrinking and our profits had been stagnant for years. I spent countless nights studying our operations, talking to employees, and learning everything I could from my dad. I implemented new inventory management systems, digitized our records, brought in modern machinery, and expanded our marketing efforts. Within 3 years, our profits increased by 40%. My dad was really proud and would often tell people how I was born to run this business. Everything was going well until about 2 years ago when Ethan suddenly started showing interest in our business. He began coming to our house for dinner 3 or 4 times a week, always steering the conversation toward business. At first, he would just ask questions about how things worked, but gradually he started suggesting changes we should make. Most of his ideas were impractical or had already failed in the past, but my sister Daphne would always praise him like he was some business genius. My mom has always favored Daphne. She's the perfect daughter who got married young, gave them 3 grandchildren, and always agrees with everything they say. I, on the other hand, focused on my education and career. I'm still single at 30, which according to my mom, is practically a crime. She never misses a chance to remind me how I should settle down like my sister. I started noticing changes in how my parents behaved about a year ago. My mom began talking about how family-oriented Ethan was, and how he would do anything to provide for his wife and kids. She would constantly tell my dad that maybe we should give Ethan a chance in the business. My dad initially disagreed, saying Ethan had no experience in manufacturing, but my mom and Daphne kept working on him. Then 8 months ago, my dad called a family meeting. I thought it was about our upcoming expansion plans that I had been working on for months. Instead, he dropped a bomb that still makes my blood boil when I think about it. He announced that since he was planning to retire next year, he wanted to start training his successor. I wasn't surprised by this part. I had been practically running the company anyway. But then he said he had chosen Ethan to take over. His reasoning: Ethan was more experienced in life because he was married with kids and would be better at handling the responsibility. He said the business needed someone stable and family-oriented at its helm. When I pointed out my MBA, my years of experience in the company, and all the improvements I had made, my mom jumped in saying I was being selfish and that family comes first. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was family too, their actual son. But apparently, being their favorite daughter's husband carried more weight than being their son who had dedicated his entire career to the business. The worst part came when my sister Daphne, with that smug smile I've grown to hate, told me that Ethan would generously let me stay in the company and work under him if I wanted. She said I could learn a lot from him. That night, I went home and really thought about my options. I had saved quite a bit of money over the years, living frugally while my sister and Ethan bought a big house and luxury cars. I had also built strong relationships with our clients and suppliers. Most importantly, I knew the industry inside out. The next morning, I handed in my resignation. My parents were shocked. They probably thought I would accept their decision like I had accepted all their favoritism toward Daphne over the years. My dad tried to convince me to stay, saying we could work something out where Ethan and I could run the business together, but I knew that would never work. Ethan was already acting like he owned the place, and I refused to be subordinate to someone who knew nothing about our industry. When word got out that I was planning to start my own business in the same field, my parents lost it. They accused me of betraying the family. My mom said I was trying to hurt them deliberately by becoming their competitor. I reminded them that they were the ones who betrayed me first by choosing an outsider over their own son who had proven himself time and time again. That was 8 months ago. I've hardly spoken to them since then, except at a couple of family weddings where we maintained a cold civility. I used my savings and took out a small loan to start my own manufacturing unit. Many of our old clients who had worked with me for years and trusted my expertise switched to my company. My business is already doing well, and every time my parents hear about my success through relatives, they try to reach out to patch things up. But I ignore them because I know they're only reaching out because they see I'm successful, not because they regret their decision. I know some people might think I'm being harsh by competing with my family's business, but I believe I made the right choice. Why should I have stayed and worked under someone who had no qualifications just because he married my sister? Sometimes you have to look out for yourself because clearly no one else will. Update 1. And a lot has happened since my last post, and honestly, watching everything unfold has been both satisfying and sad. Remember how my parents chose Ethan because he was more experienced in life and would be better at handling responsibility? Well, those words are coming back to haunt them in ways none of us expected. I've been hearing about the chaos at my family's business through my cousin Mark, who still works there as a senior manager. According to him, Ethan has been making one disastrous decision after another. Within just 2 months of taking control, he fired most of our experienced management team, people who had been with the company for 15 to 20 years and knew every aspect of the business. His reason? He said they were too set in their old ways and weren't innovative enough. The truth is, these managers often questioned his ridiculous ideas, so he replaced them with his friends from his previous sales jobs. These new people have zero experience in manufacturing. One of them used to sell insurance. Another was a real estate agent, and none of them understand how a manufacturing unit operates. Ethan's latest brilliant idea was to completely change our product line. Our company has been known for high-quality industrial equipment for 3 generations. We had a loyal customer base and a solid reputation in the market. But Ethan decided that we should switch to producing consumer electronics, because that's where the big money is. He didn't do any market research, didn't consider our existing capabilities, and didn't even consult with any industry experts. He just had a gut feeling that this was the right move. The most alarming part came to light last week, when Mark told me that Ethan had taken out massive loans to fund these changes. He convinced my dad to sign papers for multiple bank loans using company assets as collateral. My dad, who still owns the majority shares, apparently trusted him blindly because he's family. From what Mark could gather, Ethan has already borrowed almost as much as the company's annual revenue. The situation in the factory is even worse. The new management team has no idea how to handle the workers or maintain quality standards. 3 of our best supervisors quit last month because they couldn't deal with Ethan's erratic management style. Apparently, he comes to work late, calls endless meetings where he just talks about his vision, and when things go wrong, which is increasingly often, he throws temper tantrums and blames everyone else. My sister Daphne is still living in her own world. She keeps posting on social media about how proud she is of her entrepreneur husband, who is modernizing the family business. When some of our old employees commented about the problems, she blocked them and told everyone they were just jealous of Ethan's success. Last week, my mom tried to reach out to me through my aunt. She didn't apologize for what they did, of course. Instead, she asked if I could give Ethan some friendly advice, since I had more experience in the industry. She said it would be good for the family if I helped him. I couldn't help but laugh. I reminded my aunt to tell my mom that if they wanted my expertise, they should have thought about that before choosing him over me. My mom called me directly the next day, angry that I had refused to help. She said I was being petty and letting my ego get in the way of family harmony. I asked her where this concern for family harmony was when they dismissed my years of hard work and chose Ethan just because he was married to their favorite daughter. She hung up on me. Meanwhile, my business is doing better than I expected. I've already captured about 20% of the market share in our region. Most of our old suppliers prefer working with me because I maintain professional relationships and pay on time, unlike Ethan, who apparently tries to renegotiate prices after delivery. 3 more of our old clients switched to my company last week after Ethan missed their delivery deadlines. The most interesting interaction happened yesterday when Daphne showed up at my office unannounced. She looked less smug than usual. She started by saying that family should stick together and that I should help Ethan for the sake of our parents' legacy. I reminded her of how she had smugly told me I could work under Ethan if I wanted. Her response that was different because back then we thought Ethan would succeed. I couldn't believe her audacity. I asked her if she realized what she had just said, that they gave the business to Ethan without any guarantee of his capabilities. While I had already proven myself, she started to make excuses, but I cut her off and asked her to leave. As she was leaving, she turned and said I would regret not helping family. I told her I already regretted the years I wasted trying to prove myself to a family that would never value me as much as they valued her husband. The whole situation is a mess, but I'm focusing on growing my business. Several more employees from my family's company have contacted me asking if I have positions available. I've hired a few who I know are good workers. As for my family, they made their choice, and now they have to live with the consequences. I'll update again if anything significant happens, but from what I'm hearing, things are only going to get worse at my family's business. Update 2. Everything has completely fallen apart at my family's business, and what's come to light in the past few weeks is worse than anyone could have imagined. Remember Mark, my cousin, who kept me informed about what was happening? Well, he contacted me urgently last month with information that even shocked me despite my low opinion of Ethan. It turns out Ethan hasn't just been making terrible business decisions. He's been actively hiding the extent of the damage he's caused. Mark discovered this when he was helping the accounts department prepare some vendor payment reports. He noticed large discrepancies between the numbers Ethan was showing my dad and the actual financial statements. The situation came to a head when 3 of our major suppliers stopped deliveries due to unpaid bills. My dad finally stepped in and demanded to see the detailed financial reports that Ethan had been too busy to share for months. What they discovered was devastating. The business had lost almost 70% of its value in just 6 months under Ethan's management. But that wasn't even the worst part. Ethan had been taking out multiple loans using company assets as collateral without fully disclosing the terms to my dad. He had apparently convinced my dad to sign papers that he claimed were routine business documents. The total amount he borrowed was nearly double what we originally thought, and instead of investing this money in the business as he claimed, he had been playing the stock market, trying to make quick profits to cover his mounting losses. When confronted, Ethan tried to justify his actions by saying he was trying to multiply the company's wealth quickly because the traditional manufacturing business was too slow. He admitted to losing significant amounts in risky day trading, but claimed he could recover it all with one good trade. The delusion of this man is truly astounding. My sister Daphne's reaction to all this was perhaps the most infuriating part. Instead of accepting that she and our parents had made a catastrophic mistake in trusting Ethan, she tried to deflect blame onto me. She's been going around telling relatives that if I hadn't left and started competing with them, Ethan wouldn't have been under so much pressure to perform. According to her, Ethan only took such risks because he was trying to prove himself in the face of my hostile competition. The stress of discovering the true state of the business took a severe toll on my dad. He had a minor heart attack when he found out about all the hidden loans and gambling with company money. He's recovering now, but his doctors have advised him to avoid stress, which is impossible given the current situation. My parents are now facing the very real possibility of bankruptcy. The company that my grandfather started, that my dad spent his life building, and that I helped modernize, might have to be sold off just to pay the debts Ethan accumulated. Several employees have already been laid off because they can't meet the payroll, and more layoffs are coming. My mom finally broke down and called me last week. For the first time, she didn't try to defend Ethan or Daphne. She just cried and asked how things had gone so wrong. I wanted to tell her exactly how by choosing an unqualified person to run a business just because he was married to their favorite child, but I held my tongue. She's finally realizing their mistake, but it's too late now. The most recent development is that some of our former clients have been calling my parents, telling them that Ethan had been offering massive unauthorized discounts and making promises about products we never even manufactured just to keep them from switching to my company. He apparently thought he could figure out how to actually deliver these promises later, but of course, he never could. The remaining managers are jumping ship as fast as they can. Most of Ethan's friends who he hired have already left, leaving half-finished projects and confused staff behind. The factory is operating at less than 30% capacity because they can't afford raw materials, and the few clients they have left are threatening legal action over delayed orders. I'm hearing rumors that my parents are considering selling what's left of the business before it completely collapses. Part of me feels sad seeing my family's legacy crumbling like this, but another part knows this was inevitable the moment they chose to hand it over to someone so unqualified and unethical. Update 3. I didn't expect to be writing another update so soon, but yesterday, something happened that I think will be the final chapter in this whole mess. My parents showed up at my office unannounced around closing time. I hardly recognized them at first. They looked like they had aged 10 years in the past few months. My dad, who always kept himself well-groomed and dressed sharply, was in wrinkled clothes and looked defeated. My mom, who used to color her hair religiously, now had visible gray streaks. They came to apologize, they said. Finally, admitted they had been foolish to trust Ethan just because Daphne convinced them he was some kind of business genius. My dad broke down while explaining how everything they had built over decades was now practically worthless. The company that once employed over 200 people now has barely 30 workers left. They're behind on loan payments. Vendors have blacklisted them, and their reputation in the industry is completely destroyed. But the real bombshell came when they told me what happened with Ethan. Last week, when things got really bad and some creditors started threatening legal action, he simply disappeared, left a note for Daphne saying he was sorry, but he couldn't handle the pressure anymore, took their savings and just vanished. My sister is now living with our parents, still trying to defend him, saying he must have had a mental breakdown because of all the stress. She's convinced he'll come back once things cool down. My parents came with a proposal. They want me to consider buying their company and merging it with mine. They said they couldn't bear to see our family legacy sold to strangers, and they had no one else to turn to. My mom actually got on her knees, which was shocking because she's never been one to humble herself, begging me to help save what's left of the business. I asked them about the debts and legal issues. Turns out there's even more trouble than I thought. Some clients are threatening fraud charges because Ethan had taken advanced payments for orders he knew he couldn't fulfill. The bank is moving to seize some of the mortgaged assets. 3 vendors have already filed lawsuits for unpaid dues. I listened to everything quietly and told them I needed time to think about it. But honestly, I've already made up my mind. Their company is too far gone to save. The debts are more than the assets are worth. The equipment is outdated because Ethan never maintained it properly, and the reputation damage would take years to repair. Merging it with my growing business would be like tying a concrete block to someone who's swimming. More importantly, I finally built something of my own. My company is doing well. We're planning to expand to 2 more states next year, and I have a team that I trust completely. I'm not going to risk all that just because my parents finally realized their mistake. When my parents left, my mom tried one last time, saying blood is thicker than water. I reminded her that I was their blood too, but that didn't matter when they chose Ethan over me. They can sell what's left of the company to whoever is willing to buy it. I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from toxic family situations and build your own path. It might seem harsh, but I'm actually happier now than I've ever been working in the family business. This will probably be my last update. Thanks to everyone who supported me through this journey.